Hello, everybody. My name is Safi, and welcome to Overcoming the Diet Mindset podcast. I am 7 years post-op and a trainee psychotherapist. On this podcast, my aim is to vanish crappy, fad dieting and unhelpful thinking, to reclaim our mindset with a little rewiring so we can stop yo-yo dieting and get off the roller coaster for once and for all. Hello everybody, welcome to episode 8. I'm recording this episode a bit later than usual, so I'm sorry if my voice comes across as a bit tired. I am a little bit tired, but consistency is the key. So I hope you're all well. On this episode, I'm gonna share a checklist that I wish that I had almost 8 years ago. And I think that checklist would be handy for somebody who's thinking about having weight loss surgery abroad, and maybe something that you could share with a friend or a family member that is considering having weight loss abroad. Obviously, this is not an exhausted list. This is just something that I wish I knew before I had my first surgery in 2015. So I'm going to give you 7 pointers and just explain my rationale and why I think they're really important points, and hopefully they will be beneficial to people listening. So when anybody decides weight loss surgery, is never a decision that's taken lightly or a decision that's just, somebody's woken up one morning and decided, oh, I'm gonna go and have a serious relationship. No, I meant a serious operation. It's usually something that's calculated, that people have thought about, have searched for an extensive period of time, something that they have ruminated on, something that they've really, given a lot of headspace to. So yeah, it's not something. So some of these things may not be anything that's new, but I think it's something that's beneficial to revisit if you're somebody maybe perhaps thinking about even a revision and doing it a second time round. What are some of the things that you didn't think about on your first trip abroad to have weight loss surgery? Let's face it, not many people would opt to have weight loss surgery abroad if they were able to have it in the country that they reside, where everybody speaks the same language, where they could access, they could access follow-ups and, treatment if needed straight after, or, 2 years out, 3 years out, and so on. In England, the case is that most people won't qualify to have weight loss surgery on the NHS, which is because it's such a high threshold. You would have to have a BMI of over 40 or 38 if you have comorbidities. And even then, the waiting list can be up to 2 years, and that is before COVID. After COVID, I think it's possibly gone up to about 4 years now. Having weight loss surgery privately in the UK is very, very expensive, and it can cost from anything from 10 to 15 grand, which is, let's face it, out of most people's reach. Some people offer payment plans, loans, which usually also require a hefty deposit and require most people to have a good credit rating. Finance is usually provided by a third party, and there's a website that you can go on, which I thought it looked really informative. Weight loss surgery finance, compare loans now, I think Finders UK. So that's something that if you are somebody who's thinking about getting a loan, and see who does the best, it's almost like a comparison for your car insurance or house insurance, if you will. I know Vitality has a really good one, and that's something that a lot of people that I've read or have come across on social media and weight loss forums. But I believe, don't quote me, but I believe you have to you have to be on the plan for a year before you can access weight loss surgery. So yeah, that's really, I think that's your only option in the UK. So medical tourism is what most people start to think about after that, and that route starts to look really attractive. I went to Belgium to have both of my surgeries. At first, a gastric band in 2015, and then 5 years later, I went to have a mini gastric bypass with the same surgeon. And I don't think Belgium's not as expensive as the UK, but it was still a significant amount of money, and two operations, it was, I barely got any change from almost £10,000. When you add up everything, I had a gastric band, which required refills and defills, and after two pregnancies and so on. So yeah, eventually worked out to be about the same price. Why I chose the clinic in Belgium was because he was also registered with the medical council in the UK. I know they had several clinics in the UK, and safety was an important factor for me, and I'm sure it is for everybody. But especially the second time around, as somebody with two young babies, it was something that I wasn't willing to take lightly. There are other countries which price are a lot lower, significantly lower than the UK and even Belgium, such as Turkey, Egypt, Poland, which are very, very, and some other European countries which are very popular with the Brits. And if you happen to be listening in America, I am aware that Mexico is also, it's a place that's very popular with Americans who can't have weight loss surgery in America for whatever reason. The insurance and everything is very different. I'm not familiar with that with the US, process and protocol and so on. So the first thing I wish, that I want to share with somebody who is considering weight loss surgery abroad is aftercare. Aftercare is hit and miss if you have surgery abroad, with some providers considering a Facebook group as aftercare. In my opinion, aftercare is vital. Let's face it, if you're searching for weight loss surgery, most people are overwhelmed, scared of the actual procedure. Thinking about what happens next may be just a step too far. But I urge you to think about it a bit. If aftercare isn't part of the package, what pre and post op advice are they going to provide? What other providers could you access after you return home? And what aftercare can your local hospital, your local GP provide? I know this will depend on your budget, but it's worth calling around and getting some prices, even if you see someone twice a year. Getting all the information for your GP, I think it's really vital, especially if the literature or the information that you have been provided from the clinic isn't in English, or English is the second language, which is most cases. So that information may not translate very well to English when you're giving it to your GP. So I think getting as much information as possible for your GP will be really important. And remember, your GP is not a bariatric surgeon or a specialist, and sometimes, in my experience, they've been really confused about what my blood should be, what blood test I should be having, and so on. The other point I want to point out is always locate where your bariatric your local bariatric hospital is based. Not each hospital has a bariatric center. So in an emergency, where do you need to go? For example, I've always known my local one is Homerton Hospital in London, but there's quite a few in London. But if you don't live in a city, where is the nearest one? And hopefully, in the worst case scenario, if something happens, where could you be taken to? Another point that is really important and really vital to think about is support network. Most people who are thinking about weight loss surgery have lived with obesity for many years. And if you are anything like me, you've attempted every diet over the years, and you have probably had some success in losing weight, but it's always returned, with leading to shame, feeling like a failure. I know two kinds of people: those like me who made the announcement every Sunday that Monday will be the day that I will start my final weight loss journey and lose all the weight by Monday evening. I had my head deep inside the biscuit tin by Monday evening. And the other camp is those who do everything quietly and they don't tell anybody. But both of those groups feel like a failure each time they don't stick to a plan, to usually the latest silly new shiny diet. With that comes the need to do everything secretly so nobody can see you ducking up, effing up again, once more. However, with weight loss surgery, we need to find our village, we need to find our community, we need to find people like us on the same journey. We're so lucky that we've got the World Wide Web at our fingertips and we can tap into all sorts of groups. But I think when I first had weight loss surgery, Facebook groups were my savior, were my crutch, were a vital part of my journey. They were my friends, and I really, I spent a lot of time sharing my ups and downs, posting my photos of every win and new outfits. I had a lot of time actually there. I realized, which I don't have now, but I spent a lot of time in those groups, made some good friends, enjoyed everybody else's journeys, learned a lot from other people, made some great connections, which with some people I'm still friends with, and I'm hoping to actually interview a couple of those for this podcast. So please find your village, find your people, find your gang wherever they may be. There's a huge group now, there's a huge community on Instagram now, a really fun community. Tap into that. I'm part of that community, so find me at Gastric Mindset. But if you tap into any of us, the clever, artificial intelligence or whatever, the algorithm will find everybody else and suggest everybody else for you. So yep, support network. Also some hospitals, if you're lucky enough to have weight loss in the UK, I know that there's some hospitals that run support groups which are free, which I think definitely tap into that. I know there's a Facebook group which also runs free support group, and they've only just returned to having face to face. A lot of it is up north at the moment. It's called Obesity UK. I've been doing bits and pieces with Ken, who was the original founder of back in 2002, I think. He had weight loss surgery and he realized there was no community, so he founded I think it was those days where you would go to boards or forums, and now he works with their charity now. But they do a meetup on a Wednesday and another one on a Sunday. But I think the Sunday there's professionals that come in to do all sorts of different kind of talks about the process. A lot of the people are early on that journey, and I think that's really helpful if you're somebody who's thinking about going to have weight loss surgery for the first time, or perhaps a revision, or whatever, or you're somebody just tapping back in years after your first surgery or after you've had weight loss surgery. So, and we move on to, I'm not going to say the numbers because I didn't. So I'm going to just point them out. So the next one is your environment. When you return home, what are you returning home to? Getting to know yourself and being able to identify that why was the reason why you had weight loss surgery. What was the driver for you wanting to take such a not drastic, but wanting to change your life in such a meaningful way? And then really hold on to that why. And if you return home and there's, your partner's there and perhaps he likes his takeaways on a Friday, or likes for you to have your biscuits with your cup of tea while you watch Coronation Street or your favorite TV program, whatever that may be, how would you manage that? How would you bring everybody else along with you? What are you gonna change? Are you gonna, you know, is your shopping style gonna change? Is the things that you bring into your home and your environment gonna change? And that's gonna find some fine tuning. You're gonna have to find your feet in that, in making sure that people in your environment respect your environment. If your partner wants to bring in, you know, all those foods that are great, but you don't want them to be part of your daily life, you don't want it to be something that you eat every day, then how would you ask them to keep that out, to respect your boundaries, to respect your journey, to respect the way you want to treat your body? And that's gonna be a challenge. But your environment needs to, you cannot come back to an obese, I can never pronounce this word, so bear with me. Obese genetic environment. Oh dear, dear. Dyslexia, having English as a second language is not, doesn't make this easy. But obesity genetic, I can't give up. I don't want to give up, guys. Obesity genetic environment. So that is basically, we live in it every day anyway. Our environment, our shops, everything is going against us. So how do you protect that environment? How do you protect your home? How do you make that sacred, somewhere that supports you? And some of the things to think about will be, let's face it, willpower did not work out. And we all know willpower is, it's neither here or there really. So let's not rely on that. And if you listen to my couple of episodes of my podcast, I'm really big on biology and making sure that you understand what kind of machine your body is, and knowing that your machine, your metabolic set point, your body has got its own agenda. Your brain is extremely smart with its own plans to keep you alive. So, you know, don't underestimate it. Let's get ready to, to work with it in order for long-term success. So, who would do the weekly shop? What kind of food would you allow in your space? And who are you listening to? Are you listening to that colleague that's always going to be saying, let's go outside and let's go and get, 2 o'clock. You just want to get out of the office. Everything's just getting hard. You're getting tired. There's that friend who always wants, and to be honest, I was that friend. And sometimes I could still be that friend. So I'm not preaching who wants to go and get that sweet treat to get you through the day. I think that's really, really vital. So who are your supporters? Who are the saboteurs? Who are the people that are going to support you to live the life you want and to keep that success going long into those years after, 10 years, 20 years out, 30 years out, for the rest of your life. Was it for the rest of your life? I did say it's late. So, yeah. Anyway, I'm putting my teeth back in. So, the next step, which I think is the most important one, I would say that, as I am, if you didn't know, trainee psychotherapist. That's my posh voice. Anyway, so yeah, psychological readiness. That is really important. The thought work, the mindset work, the deep work, the personal work, the inner work. You get the drift. I think it's vital. Because ultimately, one thing I've learned is that eating and obesity is just the symptom. What is going on? What is your driver? And usually, why we eat is usually to soothe something or to avoid something. And a weight loss operation will not solve that. So I'm gonna get off my rant there, but what kind of support are you getting? What kind of psychological support are you getting? I know the NHS do provide some kind of psychological support. I don't think it's comprehensive. I don't think it's adequate. Please let me know if I'm wrong, because I have no experience of it. So I am just going from what I've heard from other people, the extensive that I've been doing into it. So regardless, I think ultimately, if you're somebody who's lived with obesity for over a decade or two, I think let's say 2 single appointments is not enough. It's just not adequate. And if we're just doing it just to tick a box to say that you are, and ultimately we are smart people, so I will say whatever I need to say in order to get that operation, because I ultimately I in 2014, let's say, before I had the operation, I had it in 2015, but before that, when while I was considering it, if somebody spoke to me and said to me, well, these are the questions I need to ask, and I know there's a lot of people who ask in the groups also, I would say whatever you wanted me to say, so I pass. So you're no longer a barrier to me. So you're not the gatekeeper. And then I would, because ultimately, old Safi assumed it was a food issue. I would just, I was just not strong enough. My willpower wasn't strong enough. If I stop eating, then all my problems will be solved and I'll be skinny. And weight loss and skinny was my goal, was the thing that I thought was stopping me from achieving the happiness that I was ultimately owed, or was the one thing that was missing from my life to make me whole. And then forever, the sun was going to be shining, the birds were going to be singing, and life was going to be amazing, which it is sometimes. But I still have to worry about bills, climate. The world is basically burning down currently, and I am pretty skinny, but everything else is going to, I don't know if I've said I can swear on this podcast or not. Anyway, so I won't swear, but you get my gist. So after, you could go to your GP and you'd be entitled to talk therapy like everybody else is in England, and pre or post also, even if you're having weight loss surgery abroad and your GP doesn't know about it, and you can discuss it with them and go through that process of having some therapy around some of those issues that's contributing to your weight gain, some of those traumas, some of those adverse childhood experiences, some of those small T traumas, like being called fat, or your GP blaming you for every illness under the sun for the last 10 years and shaming you and making you feel like a failure. Ultimately, I'm sure, I'm not saying GPs do this on purpose, but it is how GPs have made me feel. And I know I'm not an exception. I know I'm Sally. It's more of the norm rather than, just a one-off situation. Also, there's charities that provide therapy, some of it cheap, some of it free. Tap into that. I think it's vital. And if all else fails, you can come and listen to my podcast, and I will support you in finding some resources, some self-guided therapeutic techniques or CBT. It lends itself for you to be able to get a book and work through it. And Bex has a lot about a lot of resources on CBT and how to support yourself. So yeah, I think that's a that is the main points that I would have liked somebody to talk to me about before I went and had weight loss surgery. So to recap, ultimately is that you do your research. Who are you having weight loss surgery with? Who is the surgeon? What's their credentials? Who are they registered with? What happens if something goes wrong? What is in within your package? Do you get it to have a leak test after after you after you come out of your operation? And those are really, really, really important things. What happens in that first 24 hours, 48 hours? Do you stay at the hotel? Do you have access to the surgeons? What happens in an emergency? So I think that's always the first thing. And always go by recommendations and not by just online reviews, but try to find people that have experienced it, that you can have a full-on communication with, that they're human and you've seen their journey. And I think that's really vital. Obviously, always explore the NHS, see if you are entitled to it. The BMR, we know BMI, not BMR. What's a BMR? Is that I have no idea what a BMR is, but BMI we know can have its issues, can be problematic. So those, I think, depending on your ethnicity and so on, you may be entitled to surgery. There may be other factors that can be taken into consideration. And things are always changing, and NICE are always bringing in new guidelines. So definitely worth having a chat with your GP. And then possibly, even if you go through the weight management service, tier 1 and tier 2, or is it tier 2 and 3, whatever it may be, I think it's always worth going down that avenue. Aftercare, vital in my opinion. Can you find a dietitian that you could possibly have a one-off appointment with? Can you find a therapist that you can have a couple of sessions with? Who can you find? I know there's some groups on, I think, Barry Nation, I think, in America have some kind of a membership where they offer some kind of therapeutic support. But yeah, really, really search, go out of your way to try to find all to see what you would need to equip you for long-term success. As I said, support network will always be vital. Who are your people? Who are the 5 people that you surround yourself with? Remember, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So who are those people? Are they people who take care of their body, their mind, their soul, who value their, what they put into their body? So I think that's really vital. Having, if Auntie, Betty is a biscuit pusher, staying away from her, but figuring out, perhaps, having a rehearsal of a way to, speak to Auntie or say no to Auntie Betty without hurting her feelings. And then vitamins. They are really vital, but I really, really struggle with them. Yeah, so vitamins are not all made the same. I've read quite a lot about how easy it is for some people to just put, you know, their bariatric vitamins, which doesn't really make them anything. They're no different to vitamins that you can get from Asda. So if you can't get it from your GP or your provider, make sure that they've got the right minerals. You're getting all the vitamins that you need, especially if you're a woman, if you're going through menopause, making sure that you've got that calcium, making sure that and depending on the surgery that you've had, you will need less if you've had a band to a sleeve to mini gastric bypass to adrenal switch. I'm not going to try to pronounce that one again. That is, yeah. So I think for that last type of surgery, I know it's not very common, but it's life and death vitamins. And yeah, if you're somebody like me and you already struggled with iron, I've always been anemic, so yeah, taking those iron tablets have been vital. So I think that's really, really important. So those are the tips that I would give to somebody who was thinking about having weight loss surgery abroad. Also things like, who's going to go with you, how you're going to get home, all those good stuff that everybody thinks about all the time, and how you're going to stay in touch with your surgeon. How often do they want you to have checkups? Even if not with them, but how often do they recommend that you have checkups with your GP? So I think that is really vital if weight loss surgery abroad is is what you're gonna go with. Okay, I think that is it for today, everybody. I hope this is informative if you're somebody thinking about having weight loss surgery abroad. Thank you so much for joining me. Bye-bye. I appreciate you for being here with me. I hope you got some value from this episode. If so, please give me a review. It will make me super happy and support others from our community to find the podcast. Share it with your Barry bestie. Connect with me on Instagram at Gastric Mindset. It'll be wonderful to hear from you.